Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to work on an Olympic reel that's lost its badging, so I'm not quite sure which one it is, but this one was part of a reel purchase, a lot that I purchased a while ago. It's got a broken lever release, free drag, so I think somebody probably had this reel apart or something happened inside, maybe a broken spring or something. But anyway, we're going to take it apart, we'll clean it up. It's a lot of dirt on there. Clean this reel up, we'll put it back together, we'll show you how it's made and how to service one of these if you have it, and maybe somebody can tell me what the exact model of this is. We're going to start by taking the handle off. This handle has a screw, they all have screws basically, but it has a screw for a flat-bladed screwdriver as opposed to a nut on the top of that one. And you'll notice a couple of things as I'm doing the work on this particular reel. One is that I have a latex glove on my hand. Many of you that watch my videos know I don't like to get all that junk on it, and I also use it as a general purpose tool from time to time. So we're going to take this apart. We're going to take the handle and then the star adjuster. There's a little shim washer that goes underneath that, and then we have a gear sleeve, and that takes care of the outside and enables us to get to the gear side plate, and we'll go from there. This reel is about the size of a Penn 160 in the Beachmaster series, or possibly the Penn 9 as a level wind reel in the Penn series, just for a matter of perspective. It looks like it's a good inshore or lake reel, probably comfortable at depths of around 50 feet of water. You get beyond that, I'm going to think that the drag systems and the gear ratios probably would make it a little bit cumbersome to bring fish up from deep, but that doesn't mean you can't. These reels were designed for inshore, but now with braid, braid's going to give you greater capacity, so you could go deep with these particular reels. Olympic is a nice reel. It was made in Japan. I'm thinking it's probably the 80s or the 90s, and this one in particular is an attractive reel. It's well built. The side plates look like they're sturdy and durable. I've had a lot of Olympic Dolphins apart. I happen to like that reel. And this one may be a Dolphin. It doesn't have the blue side plates. It has more like a teal green kind of a coloring to it. But regardless, I'm sure the technologies inside are pretty much the same. Oh, there's the answer there in terms of what's going on with this. We've lost the spring here. Now, you simply don't lose springs. So my guess is that somebody probably had the reel apart to tune it up, took something apart, and didn't know how to put the spring back, or put it back incorrectly and it popped off. That's the cause. Also looking here, now this is going to confirm my suspicions, but these bridge plate screws are probably side plate screws. I'll have to go back and take a look at what we got there. These are probably side plate screws because they should not protrude out that far on the bridge. They should be like this, which is more of a flush finish to this one. So we'll take it apart and we'll see if we can find the right ones. I'm looking in the parts tray here. I see the right configurations there, so I'm going to guess it's on this side that when that was ever taken apart, they probably have short screws in here. Let's just take a quick look on that. Yeah, I think that's the answer. That one probably should be a long screw. And I'm going to take all of these apart anyway because I'll use the ultrasonic cleaner on it. Yeah, there's the other short one I'm thinking. We'll see. You'll notice I'm putting these into parts trays. It's easier for me to find the parts when I need them for reassembly. Also helps me keep order. I also tell folks as they're doing this type of work to take pictures along the way. It kind of sounds like you don't need to. You've got a good memory and all, but if you ever get stuck in that moment where you don't remember, this is a good place to try again. Go back to the pictures that you took as a reference point and see if you can determine what your next step was. So on this particular reel, I think the The schematics probably would be available somewhere if we knew what it was, but I don't know what it is. So we're going to have to take it from there. So I'm going to take all the metal pieces off. We'll put them into the ultrasonic cleaner, and we'll move from there. This spring has to be reinstalled, but we're going to take the bridge off first. And I'm not that familiar with this one. I know Olympics, as a general rule, of Dolphins have a horrible setup. Horrible to me, not to them, I guess, but a horrible setup to me in terms of loading the anti-reverse dog. And I don't know how the anti-reverse dog goes in this one. I guess we're going to find out. You'll see I'm working with 2 different screwdrivers. There's a Phillips head screw setup for these, but it also has a through slot. And sometimes it seems like I'm not grabbing it. Like right now, it looks like that screw in there got stripped from the Phillips head perspective, but you can still get a flat screwdriver blade in there, so that's what we're doing. And it looks like whoever had this reel kind of really didn't do a good job with this one. I don't know. I'm guessing, could be wrong, but I'm guessing when I see a Phillips head screwdriver with a lot of wear on the head, that sometimes that's a mechanical screwdriver that just strips it out. And I've preached on that before. I'm not going to overwear the message, but if you don't need to use a mechanical screwdriver, don't. Okay, I'm going to pick these up. These were the other side plates, but I believe there's a bridge screw in there. All right, we can push this through now. I don't see my assembly for the anti-reverse. There it is. So this one is good. This one, good. This one has a fixed anti-reverse on the dog, which makes it a whole lot easier to do the work on that reel. We're going to come back here, remove the rest. This setup is similar to a pen setup. It's got this jack that looks very much like a pen jack, and a yoke that looks very much like the pen yoke, and the 2 screws with 2 screws holding in the bridge screws. You can see them. So I guess the chances are that long one is the right one because it doesn't have the threading on it. And then we have the 2 springs that hold the yoke and the spool gear itself, which looks like it's in good condition. You want to check these. You want to make sure all the teeth are straight and aligned, that there's no scarring or broken teeth as you do this. So these 2 have the partial threading, and the spring would ride on that. So even though they protrude, I'm going to say that they belong there, and we'll go from there. Okay, I have this body out here. First thing I guess we can do is just put that yoke spring, the eccentric spring back in. And then we're going to send this off for some cleaning, and we'll come back and do the reassembly. I'm also going to check, I believe that the drag washers for the Pen 155 can be substituted here if these drag washers are worn, or the Model 160, but this looks like the Model 60, the Long Beach, can be substituted here. So we'll check that out as well. We'll check the condition of those. So this eccentric is a pass-through. We can take it out just to show you it's a pass-through. The spring then would go into the hole, and I never get this quite done easily. The second part of this, you can see the tail, where the tail is going to go. It's going to line up under the ridge here, and then you just want to flip this to find the high point. So you can grab it by reversing the lever and pulling it to a point where it rests at the midway point. And that you do that with just about any reel. Once you do that, you can flip the lever over. I'm looking, there's a lot of space here. Chances are something happened that's been working this out. I'm just going to put this in a vise for a moment. Just bend it back a little bit to kind of restore the angle that device is off camera, I realize, but I'm doing my best. So you just want to bend out a little bit to restore the angle. And I bent it just a little bit too much. So let's reverse that somewhat. Trial and error. And we can place that lever back on the shaft of the eccentric, grab that screw, put that on. All right, and then we can just tighten this down, make sure that we have this working properly. All right, we got that. All right, so I'm going to step away from the camera for a moment. You can see how the spring is supposed to work. I'm going to step away from the camera. I'm going to put the parts into a cleaner, and then we're going to come back and we'll rebuild the bridge, put the reel back together. Okay, so the reel is back from the parts bath, and while I was out, I was just working on a different reel. But let's go back to the bridge now. Take a look at this. As I mentioned, I think these might be drag sizes for the pen if you need them, but let's take a look and see what we got inside. To do that, I'm just going to simply remove the main gear from the shaft here. We can also take the pinion gear off, or pinion gear sleeve off, simply by pushing the pin through. I'm going to have to watch this the anti-reverse is on the back of the gear sleeve here, so if I'm not careful as I remove it, I may lose something. I'm going to make sure that I have the pin there as well. I'm just going to hold that anti-reverse just to make sure something unnatural doesn't happen as we remove the sleeve. And you want to remove the sleeve because typically you'll get dried grease and the like in there, and that's kind of what's happening here. I'm going to have to do a little bit of a gentle just a little bit of prying. Don't go crazy when you're prying. So here's your gear sleeve. I'm a little bit concerned about this gear sleeve because there is some play in it, but that's just time, I'm sure. And I guess if I wanted to go search around for a replacement bridge, probably wouldn't find one. But we're just going to try and keep this reel going for now. It doesn't seem to be too pronounced in terms of a problem. So let's get that done. There was some dried grease we can see up here on the tip, so let's just kind of grab some steel wool and just gently work that, and then we can just put a little bit of a coating of some blue grease. In this case, what the greases I use, and this one is a pen precision reel grease. I don't care which grease you use, just use one that's made for fishing reels. Also going to put a little bit on the bridge there where that anti-reverse dog is going to travel. You can go reinstall the gear sleeve. In order to do that, you have to pull that anti-reverse out of the way, make sure that the anti-reverse is working when you go back to reset. And I'll grab that pin and put the pin back in. There we go, and then you just either press it in or just gently tap it in. Make sure that that little tip doesn't expand beyond. If it does, I have a little dead blow hammer here that's usually pretty good about that. Give it a little tap. Let's see if we can get the drag stack out. Now let's take a look at that. The main gear is good. There's a little bit of oil in there, so let's get that off. While I'm doing that, I'm checking the teeth just like we did on the other one, making sure that they're all there. This is a nice solid piece of metal. It kind of looks like stainless, I'm not sure. All the alloys that are out there these days, I'm never quite sure, but this one looks like a stainless gear. So put some grease on that. Put that over the sleeve here. And now what we have here, wow, this is not the probably the size of the Penn Beachmaster series, but these are Teflon or plastic washers. They don't need any kind of lubrication as long as they're not cracked or broken. And we've got a big stack of these, so that's pretty good. All right, we're not going to replace any of these then. So what happens with these then is there's an alternating set of keyed washers. There's two of them, and then there's flat washers, they go in between, so we'll start by just putting in the first of the Teflons, a round one, and it goes next. Next would be the next Teflon one, or plastic one. They're self-lubricating, that's why they don't need them. They're a petroleum product by nature, so you don't need to do anything with those in terms of that. And there's a lot of reels on the market that have those as drag systems. You find that common in spinning reels. But we'll go with the next one, will be a round. So you're alternating round and eared on the metal ones. Last of the eared washers will go up top, and then we should have the next two should just be proud. There you go. Okay, so that's your drag stack. It's nice and clean. It didn't need to be repaired. Speaking of nice and clean, everything's back from their bath in terms of parts. Did take the time to towel them off. They were a little wet and had a little bit of soap residual there. I don't do much. I don't use an aggressive cleaner in the ultrasonic. I've simply been using an orange-based citric product at the moment. They seem to do well. So we're going to just reassemble the frame then. And we're going to start with the screws that I put aside here, which was the side plate. That's why the parts tray seems to work so well. So the first two I'm going to put in actually is the reel seat. This is a juggling act always. Let's see if we can grab it with the Phillips head first. So this is going to be a nice reel. Not that it wasn't to begin with, but when rebuilt, this thing should be a screamer. The two short screws go on the bottom here. Again, these grips for the Phillips head seem to have been worn. I'm going to just make it conjecture that somebody used a mechanical screwdriver on the soft metal on that one, just kind of ate it up. Next we have the four cross posts here. And now you see why I have multiple trays. I left the one side of the cross posts for one tray so that I didn't mix the screws up. So now we'll just put the cross posts in. These are nice and clean. They shined up nicely. That's what I like about the ultrasonic cleaner. There's things I don't like about it, but one of them is it's non-abrasive. And if you can get away with that, that's probably the best thing. You don't have to rub or to scar the chrome or any of the finished pieces. Working for the camera is not necessarily the natural way that you would do this, but I'm trying to keep my hands out of the picture. A lot of folks have told me that they've seen enough of my arms. And I do apologize. This is kind of like play along with me. We get two more of these, two more of the crossbars, then we'll go up and redo the bridge. We'll put this thing back together and see how it works. We know one thing for sure, we fixed the free spool eccentric issue with that spring, the release spring. And that procedure that I use there, you can use on pen reels as well. It's they're very similar. These are not identical, but this whole reel, for the most part, is very similar to a pen. I don't know. I have to do some research on this. I'm doing a complimentary mini-series on fishing reel manufacturers, and I want to find out more about Olympic. I'm kind of a fan of them. I do know they were late 20th century Japanese manufacturers, but I don't know much more beyond that, so I think we're going to have to learn there. And put a little bit of the blue grease onto the spool shaft. There's a bushing in the back here, not a bearing, so we'll just go ahead and put a little bit of grease on that. We'll nest this. While I'm nesting it, I'm also going to use that same grease for the front end of the shaft here. And we'll just put that right back in the parts tray. Okay, next up then would be the bridge and the yoke and the jack assembly. So we're going to do this just like you would a pen. There's a little nesting hole in here for the 2 yoke springs. And I know where to find them in my parts tray. Set that down for a moment, get the yoke. Now I didn't put the yoke and the jack into the ultrasonic cleaner. These are clean. If you needed to clean them up, you could use some steel wool. If you use steel wool, just use the 4O. Don't go any more aggressive than that. 4O is the finest of the sets. We already looked at that spool gear. We're going to go ahead and just grab this. Make sure we get some nice grease on both sides. And we did grease the main gear as well. So the spool gear goes next on the yoke assembly over the springs. And I'm trying to do this with the audience in mind here. It doesn't always work that way. So we now have that loaded. Simply take the next piece then. We have 2 big studs, one with the anti-reverse and one without the anti-reverse. 2 holes in the case for that, so we're just going to lay this over. Okay, now that the bridge stack is in, we just want to put those screws back in now. We're going for the longer ones, and again, I don't know why they protrude, but they do. So that's just kind of the way it is, I guess. So I'll go ahead and put those in. And again, they have that strip, so I'm thinking that somebody did something with a mechanical screwdriver here, but that's okay, as long as I can get it with one. I'm not using this for collectible, I'm using this to get this back out fishing again. I just find it unusual that that one goes through so far, but it does, and that's the way it goes, I guess. Okay, here we go. We have a functioning reel. I'll go ahead and put the sleeve on, the little separator washer. And that post is not as sure as we would like it to be, but again, with the age of the reel and you know what, I'm going to leave that off until I put the frame on. So we've already lubed the frame. There's a chrome band here. Just looking for the holes to align here. Press that on. And again, we have longer and shorter screws. The longer screws belong in the outposts, in the crossbars, and then the shorter ones belong in the reel seat. And when I put these back on, I like to go in an alternating pattern. I don't like to go around the horn, so to speak. I like to go one there. We'll get one in the reel seat here. And that'll keep the pressure even in the reassembly process. And we'll come over here to this crossbar. Load that one up. Back down to the second reel seat. And with any luck, we'll have a nice looking as well as fully functioning reel. 2 more screws are what's in my parts tray, so we're going to assume we have 2 more screws here, and that's always a good thing with the parts tray. If you have any leftover pieces and parts, you better go back and figure out where you left them. What you forgot to line up there. Speaking of lining up, so I use this punch a lot. Sometimes it works just like that to line a hole up so that you can get the screw in properly. I don't know what was the torsion there, but that helped. So keep one of those punches. You can use a carpenter's awl, which is what I use. There's a lot of different things that have points on them. I suggest you find one, but find a thin variety of them, because a lot of the stuff that you're going to be working on is thin by nature. So if you get one that's too thick, like a scratch awl for a carpenter, it's not going to serve your purposes as well as a thinner one. Okay, last of the screws. Tighten those all down now. Make sure they don't come loose. Right there. Gear sleeve. Tension washer. And you need to make sure as you put these on that you're putting them on square. Otherwise you risk the cross-threading these. So sometimes it takes a little patience, but don't force anything in terms of trying to get it started. If it's not going right, chances are it's not square. There we go. Just takes a little bit. In this case, they have a slot here, so if you find the shaft spinning, you can take a longer or wider bladed screwdriver into that slot to hold it, and then eventually you'll get the handle working so that you can tighten down your drag. And we're up with the finish screw. Now if we had not taken that gear sleeve off and lubricated, you could have put oil in through this hole here, but since we did that, that's not necessary. Just tighten this down, we'll give it a spin, we'll see what happens. Okay, we're in free spool. Oh, look at that. Nice. That's what I like about the Olympic reels. They're just nice reels all around. That's just spinning freely. I'm going to go put some braid on this one, and it's going to be a nice casting reel. Here we are from a cranking standpoint. Very nice. Typical of a low retrieve lake inshore reel, and just test the drags to make sure they work, and boy, they sure work. Okay, so that's it. This is an Olympic made in Japan reel, 80s, 90s. Lost its model number information, but that doesn't mean that the reel can't be used, that's for sure. Here we go. Okay, so we fixed the eccentric and the free spool release. Gave it a good tune-up. You got to see what's going on inside that reel. If you have one, you know how to repair one. If you see one out there in the flea markets or secondary markets like eBay and the like, and you want to purchase one, you now know what it's like. It's a high-quality reel for inshore and deep lake fishing, and nice product overall. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please subscribe. That's what keeps this channel going. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.